Liis, Giraldo. I've probably spent a little bit over 20 years in technology, working cross industry, but a lot of time spent within healthcare, payer provider networks, hospital networks. And really today, what I would like to focus in on is not so much of the healthcare expert, because many of you out there are the experts. What I want to focus in on is how not only the broader industry is adopting rapid application development like low code, or you hear multi-experience platforms, but specifically what we're seeing as trends and patterns within healthcare, life sciences, and pharma. So as we step right in, I'm going to go into a little bit. I'll start with some kind of macroeconomic trends briefly, just to set context. I'll get into a little bit of some common challenges that we see. I'll put some more relevancy relative, to according to the audience here in the room, as far as how you can take back and apply it within your respective healthcare practices. And then I'll wrap up with some benefits around what we're able to deliver for our clients. So high level, on the theme that Jason mentioned earlier around composability, that's obviously front and center cross industry. What does composability mean? I won't go through all the definition. I fundamentally believe it's about building for many as opposed to one. Building for one has high TCO. It's not replicable. You can't reuse that. It's costly and it's difficult to manage. So there's a ton of implications there. And so there's a number of technologies that fold into the composable enterprise, as a composable architecture, and we've heard that term before, but we view ourselves as one of those key building blocks or Lego blocks to fit into these different initiatives to drive not only efficiencies, but unlocking some of the revenue bottlenecks. So you can see on the left, right, we think about, I would classify Outsystems, and many of you may not have heard of us, European-based company based out of Lisbon, really in the last 2 to 3 years have been focused on the Americas market. Is really in two categories on the left, just to kind of center everybody. Multi-experience platform, where we're a leading provider in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, as well as Forrester Wave, and then the composable enterprise. So those are really two areas where we see, but fundamentally what we're talking about here is changing how you innovate with software, and really the app development component of that. To the right, I won't bore you with the details, you can read, but this is all about hyper automation. This is all about driving more innovation on the edge. So leveraging your investments on traditional ERP and SaaS solutions and driving more connectivity. So as Jason mentioned, what we're seeing is that there's a big focus on RPA, there's a big focus on low code, there's a big focus on AI and ML, regardless of industry. And that's really back to this point of driving more of that building package business capabilities that you can replicate across, in and outside of the hospital, as an example, to where you're driving more scale, more throughput, and reducing your cost and your expenses while doing so. So demand for low code is growing, and I'll give you some just high level themes as to why that is. So some market forces that are important that I think many of you probably are experiencing in your own right. There is a developer shortage. Right? It's basic supply demand. There is more demand for continuing development, burning down backlog, bringing out applications to drive patient experience, cross-care team collaboration, vaccinations, testing, all the like, right? But there is a shortage. So how do you actually drive more throughput productivity from your existing team members while upskilling them and making sure that you're driving more throughput, and that IT really becomes a partner to the business and not a bottleneck to driving or stifling innovation. So that's the talent piece, is a fundamental thing I want to make sure that we focus in on. Secondarily, there's an enormous amount of spend around CX, call it patient experience, or I call it experience optimization. The days of patient experience and employee experience being separate areas of focus are gone. They have to be in a strong interlock. So what you provide to your employees from a digital innovation standpoint will ultimately impact your patients, your physicians, your nurses, and the whole hospital care ecosystem. Then you look at the emerging technology. So this is very important, right? All these emerging technologies, many organizations, not just within, in healthcare and life sciences and pharma, are trying to figure out how they bring and consume this and integrate it and coexist with what is a very complex ecosystem. So how do you leverage legacy? or drive a better front-end experience or a better integration. And then obviously the proliferation of applications. So all of these market forces really are driving what is a massive market that we're seeing continuing each day around why organizations are adopting low-code application development or multi-experience platforms. So this is just another component here to just emphasize that there's no silver bullet, right? Traditional development, just like legacy, will be around. What we're trying to do is serve as a catalyst to drive that innovation. So here is, I think, a useful slide to look at some of the projections related to how low-code application development will continue to increase, just given on those market forces that we saw earlier, right? But it's a better together story, and that's the important part here, which is you will continue to drive traditional development for things you need to do, but the more you can kind of offload not only the upfront development, but ongoing support and maintenance of what you develop, and that it does not become shadow IT, that's where low-code application development can come into play, if managed correctly. So as we stop through, and I'll start to get into some challenges, and we'll start to get a little bit into what Outsystems is seeing across industry and specifically within healthcare, life sciences, and pharma. Time to innovate is now. So time is of the essence. How do you go faster, and how do you do that with quality and speed? The inflexibility of what's in place today. How do you not necessarily decommission that and drive too much disruption within your respective businesses and across your patients and across your care team network, but still leverage and burn down the backlog and leverage the resources you have? That feeds into the scarcity of resources, right? The talent crunch, as many are seeing. And then mobile experience, right? Mobility, web, progressive web applications. How do you drive a consistent brand and experience across all of your devices, whether they're online or offline? And how do you continue to drive a competitive advantage in the marketplace? So this is a lot of what we're seeing that's obviously driving the adoption of low-code and driving innovation. I'm, again, not the healthcare expert here, so you can apply where that pertains within your respective organizations. But this is kind of who we are. So very quick, just background, because I know many folks may not know us, but we've been around for quite some time with the focus of actually driving more automation around software development and delivery. So Paulo Rosado, our CEO, actually helped define the term with Gartner around low code. He still doesn't really quite like the term, but it was the best at the time and still continues to prevail. And it's really around taking a very laborious task, which is traditional code development, and automating that, driving more componentization or composable enterprise and architecture to drive more scale and throughput so that you can deliver more business outcomes and more patient outcomes. So we're proven across the globe, be it we're probably several years in where we're really focused in the Americas market, but we do have some notable wins, and we're seeing a continued uptick within the healthcare, life sciences, and pharma space. So I will start to dip into some of those example or representative use cases that we see. And again, I think they do complement quite well what Jason was mentioning earlier, is where we see some areas of automation, we see some areas of digital experience or patient experience. So I'll touch on those here in a moment. Before I do that though, because we are a rapid application development platform, as we like to call it, we actually can address internal and external applications. So really based on your backlog and your prioritization, we can focus in on the patient, focus beyond the hospital walls, or look at your medical staff and your carers to get a better efficiency and process and how you surface some of those automation imperatives up to the user experience. So some of it is automation, a lot of it is integration, but then how do you surface that to humans that need to interact and be more efficient, more productive, and ultimately deliver better patient outcomes? So what we look at is 4 digital transformation initiatives that are common themes across the board. So we look at our platform, which I'll highlight very quickly, and then we'll have some post-session detail to go deeper into the components. It's a full stack development platform. So you look at the data layer, the business logic layer, as well as the UI UX. So all components, as in the spirit of this composable enterprise solution, can be leveraged. It really depends on what you're focusing on, what you have in place today, and are you really thinking about rebuilding, refactoring, or just focusing on different use cases. So it really is dependent on where you start. To give you an example, We were the large cancer center just a little over a year ago where when the pandemic hit, they had no telemedicine portal in place. We were able to actually work with them with a small development team of a handful of folks and deliver a telemedicine portal within 4 to 6 weeks. And they're now booking over 150,000 appointments on a weekly basis. So just gives you the sense of the power of speed and not having something in place. So that's just one example. In other cases, we're focusing on cross-care team collaboration. So how do we drive more efficiencies around routing and workforce management and triaging across, physicians and nurses and specialists in and outside of the hospital wall. So we're seeing a huge uptick there. So just to give you a sense of some example, and there's interplay across our 4 initiatives, that number of healthcare institutions are leveraging the power of our platform to coexist with what they have in place today. So in that case, with the cancer center, they developed a new solution from scratch. In other cases, we have to integrate with, as I mentioned earlier, where traditional SaaS and ERP solutions have gaps. So these are just some examples, again, for you to take back and think through, that we're addressing for many clients across the globe to drive a better patient experience on the left-hand side, but also a better care team collaboration and process for folks that are supporting those experiences with their patients. So I'm kind of flying through here, just trying to catch up on time for Ron and for the rest of us. But I won't go into a lot of the specific components. But if you think about the Outsystems platform, you can do the research. I'm sure some of you have already done so. We are a proven platform. The market is saturated. Over 250 players in the market. We're one of the top 3 to 4 players. We feel like we've got this, one of the strongest platforms for you to consider. But it's really built with this purpose in mind. There's always going to be change, and you need to integrate with what you have today and coexist to deliver ultimately what our experience is, right? So if you look to the right, how do you deliver better experiences, regardless if that's an employee, right, a physician, a registered nurse, or out to your patient, or out to to a care home. So when thinking about that, there's different elements you can leverage on the left. Integration is key. Extensibility is also part of that, what we talk about, sort of innovation on the edge. And then full life cycle management. We can integrate that with your DevOps organization to drive ultimately, again, which is more consistent brand accessibility and overall experience across your web and mobile applications. So, and with that, obviously, it's important that we partner with your preferred ecosystem on the partner side to deliver scale, security, and performance. And we are also a flexible platform in that we can be delivered on-prem, in the cloud, and it's really up to how you want to deploy your specific use case. So why modern app dev with Outsystems? It really comes back to these areas. Time to market or acceleration of your innovation plans, which is a lot of what we're seeing. Time is now. How do you drive more productivity and throughput as a result of that? So not just the upfront development, the ongoing maintenance and support. If we think about the talent crunch, as I mentioned, right? If you have an organization where your development teams, engineering teams, architecture teams are spending more than 50% of their time maintaining, you have a retention, you have a potential churn risk. And I see it all too often. I'm working with many CFOs, CIOs, and the whole C-suite and the whole medical staff and leadership communities to say, how can you preserve, upskill that talent, and how do you get more with either what you have or less? And then we got to factor in driving that multi-experience across what is a very complex ecosystem. And coexistence is crucial, right? Coexistence is crucial, and scalability is also very important. And that's the key piece here, which is when people hear low code, they associate that with just, hey, this is a corner case, internal application, not mission critical. I would beg you to also look and do research there. Which companies are driving enterprise scale mission critical applications across their enterprise and out externally to their consumer base? Because that's a key thing in factoring sort of not only the near term but the longer term strategy of how you deploy low code in your enterprise. So I'll wrap up with this. Give some time back. I'm kind of going pretty quickly. As I mentioned, it's building it fast. So we're seeing in many cases 3 to 7x, even 10x the speed to market, right? So it does depend what you focus in on, but there is, whether it's internal sort of process automation, app modernization efforts, or external facing applications, we can do both. It's really, we'll take your guidance on where you want to drive those outcomes. The building it right and for the future is a crucial part in the evaluation. So many times when we go into evaluations with ourselves and other platforms that are out there within the low code, no code space, this is typically where we feel like we have a very competitive advantage. This is about reusability, the assembly process of driving, as I mentioned, packaged business capabilities, right? To what you build for one application, leveraging 40, 50, 60%, maybe even 80% of that application to the next one. And then how do you continue to make sure that you're managing that, governing that in a way that's scalable and secure for the future? Building for the future, as I mentioned there, this is about reducing the tooling. How do you coexist? There's even companies that are looking and evaluating ERP and CRM solutions, right? Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're not willing to take that transformative leap with low code yet, but it's happening. So I'll leave you with that. And I think the time now is to really, if you're looking at innovation or experimentation, you feel like time, talent, and cost are things that are driving you to make very tough decisions and to deliver a better experience for your patients and across your care team ecosystem. I would urge you to take a look at low-code application development and focus in on those vendors that are proven across the globe, and we feel like we're in that position to do so.